Hey, thank you for joining me for this little mini bonus episode. One thing that I have learned over the last 8 years with my beautiful, amazing, smart little boy is that autism is unpredictable, especially when we factor in sensory processing. So today for this little bonus session, I wanted to share with you my holiday outing survival guide. If you have a little one, whether it's your own little one or a niece or a nephew or a close friend who is struggling with autism or sensory processing disorder or really anything in between where they get sensory overwhelm during this time of year. So when we first had our little guy, when he was first born, the first, I want to say, 2 years, we went through the holiday season. So the holiday season for us being Halloween all the way to the first week of January, right? That's the holiday season in full, where we are celebrating something. And then in our family, we have birthdays from October through February, really. So in between the holidays and the parties at church, the parties at school, social parties, whatever. We have birthdays in the middle. So it's all this sensory input. And if you are not familiar with sensory input is all the things that our senses, so seeing, smelling, tasting, hearing, touching, tasting, that we take in, right? We're inputting. So during the holiday season, this can look like music, right? We have if you go to stores or you go to events, church, anything like that, school even, it's usually a heavy season for joyous music, right? We're playing Christmas carols, hymns, traditional songs, New Age Christmas. So we're always listening to something. Our ears rarely get a break during this time of year. Lights. Everybody has lights out. Even people who don't celebrate Christmas tend to put lights out. We have lights outside. There are lights in the store. You can drive through lights. You can walk through lights. Lights are everywhere. And there's different kinds. There's flat lights, strobing lights, streaming lights, twinkling lights, flickering lights, fading lights. They're LED, they're warm yellow, they're multicolored, they're C7s. There's a whole bunch of things. And then we have a mass of people just everywhere. Everybody comes out this time of year. I don't know why. It's cold. It's dark. Who wants to be out in this? It's unpleasant. Why don't we have this showing over the summer? But that is a lot of sensory. And then we have candy canes, hot chocolate, cookies. It's literally an abundance of sugar overload from Halloween all the way through January. Really, Halloween through Easter, if you really think about it, because then we have Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, Easter. These are all sugar-filled holiday celebrations, even if that's not your faith. So this is all sensory, right? And when we're talking about an individual, when we're talking about autism, or we're talking about sensory processing disorder, or any of the exceptionalities that fall into that realm, because there are a couple that fall into that realm, what does that look like? What does it mean when we say somebody has sensory processing disorder? I had somebody explain it to me like this once, and It's the best explanation I've ever heard. And now, professionally, as a behavior specialist and as a therapist, like this is my explanation every time. It's like your car, right? And you're at a four-way intersection and all four lights turn green at the same time. Well, what's going to happen? No matter what direction the cars go, they're all going to run into each other. That's what sensory input overload is like. You take it all in, but you don't know what to do with it. Like it wants to come out of your fingers, it wants to come out of your eyes, it wants to come out of your ears. And this is the time of year, every year. And I talk to a lot of parents during this time of year who go through this, and we have these conversations. And trust, like my husband and I went through this ourselves, and it took us a little time to get used to navigating this. They want to go to the parties, they want to do the brunches and the dinners and, you know, the exchanges and everything, and they want to have a good time, but it's not a good time because they have a child that cannot do this, that they just simply cannot manage through it. And what do? I actually had a conversation with a mom years ago, and she said to me, I love this time of year. I love to go to the parties and I love to be at families. And we do like this amazing party where we do like what's that called? A white elephant exchange, right? But it's miserable. It's miserable now because my child has no ability to cope with the party and all they do is cry. And I end up leaving 10 to 15 minutes into being there, and I don't know what to do. I would love for my child to experience this, but I don't think it's going to happen. And I realize for some of you, that might be a very hard thing to just have heard, right? And it sounds cold and it's insensitive. But the real nature of this is that is what we deal with as parents of children with exceptionalities. We have to have this balance and this like life revelation over what these scenarios look like now. And in a way, and this mom wasn't, you know, saying anything like negative towards their child or placing blame or anything. She was just saying like, it's miserable now. Like I used to love this and now like there's no joy in it. That can happen. That can happen. And it's nobody's fault. It's just what it is, right? So there are some things that we can do to help these situations. And I, every year in some way, shape or form, I try to share this. I try to get this out somewhere because a lot of the times we live in surviving chaos through the holiday season because it goes fast and we have a lot of responsibilities and we're just trying to do and catch up. Everything just moves faster during this time. So here are some things that you can do and take to make it a little easier. The first thing, and I recognize that some of these might seem silly or some of these might sound like, oh my God, I'm not doing that. But trust me, give it a try, give it a go, give it a go. So the first thing is communication of the schedule. And what does that mean? Do I mean that you're communicating your schedule with another adult? No, I don't. I mean that you are communicating the schedule, especially if there's an event like a party involved. You are communicating that ahead of time. And I'm talking like 2 weeks out. You are communicating that on a regular basis with your child. How young is too young? I would say if your child is 2 years old and up, And social situations, gatherings, parties, holiday exhibits, store runs, anything like that, if that is overwhelming for your child, if that is not a good experience or something that they are currently not able to manage and navigate, you need to be communicating the schedule for that said event ahead of time with your child on a regular basis. So for me, if I was doing this with my child, now every child's different and every child is going to need a different level of communication. So for my child, if I were communicating that, for example, we're going to go to a Christmas party and a lot of people are going to be there, and I know it. I know a lot of people are going to be there. And I know there's a potential for disaster. 2 weeks before this party, I am going to start telling my child what the schedule is. That on, now mind you, my child is a little older now. But even when he was younger, I did the same thing. Even if he wasn't ready to fully understand, I did this because I was setting up the expectation, telling him on Saturday, looking at a calendar, on Saturday, December 18th, we're going to go to a party. And the party starts at 12 o'clock and it gets over at 3 o'clock. So I would communicate with that. And for him particularly, I would probably communicate that in small way. Like it doesn't have to be like a big drawn adult conversation. Just like, yeah, I'm just Saturday, December 17th, we're going to go to a party from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Like every day I would remind him. Because one of the things that throws us off in sensory processing is the feeling of not having control. All of it is human nature to want to have control, right? Even children, they want to have control. We all like to feel that we have control over our lives and what we're doing and how we're doing that. Children are the same way. So if we want to teach them how to manage emotions and utilize coping skills and have an expectation of the schedule, we have to be sharing the schedule with them. So share the schedule with them. If your child is younger, if your child is between the ages of 2 and I would even say up through age 13, I mean, we do use these for teenagers when appropriate. But a picture schedule. So we have a big whiteboard in our house that outlines, now it outlines all 30 days, 31 days of the month. And our child's old enough now to know a calendar and is reading fluently and everything. So that's appropriate. We don't need to have pictures attached to it anymore. But we did at one time, and it went Sunday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It went all the way down, and we had different little pictures that would correlate to certain events that we knew were challenging. And we put those on a day, right down to, there was a period of time where we needed to schedule grocery shopping, especially if he needed to come with me to grocery shop. So, I couldn't just get up and be like, let's get in the car, let's go grocery shopping. No, like it needed to be scheduled. If he had to come with me, then I needed to give him prep time to know that we were leaving the house to go to the grocery store. So making sure that you're communicating that schedule and that they're seeing it in a meaningful way. Now, if you have a teenager, if you have an older child and they have an iPad, an iPod, a cell phone, a tablet, a Chromebook, anything like that, you can actually share a calendar with them. Or you can use an app that has appropriate reminders and schedules for them that will come up for them so that way they can visually see. That way they know that they have control over the schedule, over how their schedule, how their time's being utilized. Even if it's something that they have to go to, and there's no choice in that. And I know we get tied up in that, like, I'm the parent, I'll tell them when. Yeah, but you got to throw a rope, right? Um, the other thing is to stick to your times. And I know that sounds harsh, but if you tell your child, and certainly if you know they're only going to last an hour, then it's an hour. It's an hour. You have an hour. Um, because once we get to the peak of sensory overload, we have to come down, right? And what does down look like? Well, if you've lived in this long enough, you know that down can very much look like a meltdown. It can look like crying and screaming and all the things that we don't want to happen. So stick to your time frame and know your time frame. That makes it successful for them. And the more successful they are, then the longer you can start branching out that time. You can start extending that time, working on an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and 30 minutes. And it'll make it a positive experience for you too. Because even though it was an hour, it was a successful hour. And that's more than you would have had if you didn't go, right? So success is the name of the game, and knowing your time and sticking to it. Making sure that the people you're going to be with are in the know, that they're in the know, even if they don't agree, even if they don't understand. Like, listen, we're going to come. I'm going to accept your invite because trust me, we all have those family members, and I have those family members too. They're like, nothing's wrong. Just come. We want to see you. We want to see them. Well, half the time they don't want to see me. They want to see my kids. And just making sure, God, I got sidetracked for a second, making sure that they're in the know. Like, listen, we're going to come, but just know that Sally might struggle with this because, it's the holiday season. It's overwhelming. You're going to have people in your house. It's going to be loud. And this is a struggle. So we're going to come. I just need you to be a little understanding that you might see this. And when you're having that same conversation, asking them, hey, when we come to you, I'm going to give you two sides here. When we come to you, do you mind just designating a quiet place for Sally? Whether that's like in a section of room, whether that's, I have some people who do like the upstairs hallway is the quiet zone, or they have a room that is allowed to be accessed by children who need noise reduction, just somewhere that's out of the path of chaos. I can share with you, because I know she won't mind. My sister-in-law, actually, for the longest time when we would go over there, she always had her front room available for our son because that was a quiet room in her house. Or she had her, she has a finished basement, sorry. She has a finished basement, and it was always accessible to him. And she always made sure that there were tracks and cars and trains and stuff down there. So if it got overwhelming, if it got a little too loud in her house, there was a safe space for him because he's a child, but also that it was quiet and it wasn't demeaning for him. It wasn't like, oh, you're just thrown in this hole. Like, it was set up for him to have a good time. And he utilized the spaces and he loved it. So having that open communication with the other party. Now, if you are the person hosting the party and people are coming to you for whatever reason, you invited them or they invited themselves or they just showed up, whatever, making sure that you have that quiet space in your home that is available for your child, and it is off limits to the party. So for us, as an example, our child, when he was younger, he had a quiet tent that was set up for him. It literally was just like a little tent. I think we got it from Target, that we had set up. And it had his stuffies, his blanket, dinosaurs, because he loves dinosaurs, pillows, whatever. It was like set up for him. So he could go in there and the little like flaps would close. Nobody else could go in. It was his quiet space. Now he's older and he has his bedroom. That he can go to. We obviously, when we host, we do not allow guests in the bedroom. So he has his bedroom now. But we always made sure that we had a quiet space that was able to be supervised, it was safe, and it was, entertaining, because we want everybody to enjoy themselves. My favorite, and I say that for many reasons, piece of advice, and something that we have done certainly, and we still do, is to make sure that you have a bag packed if you're leaving the house. And this is a high preference bag. So the things that are portable that your child likes, they're in that bag, especially if it's a place that you intend to be at for a little bit of time. Make sure you have it. And yeah, I get it. Like if you go to your parents' house, or you go to Uncle Jim's house or whoever, and they're older generation and they don't typically, understand, you might hear some backlash from that, but that's okay, because it's not their kids. So who cares? So what? But making sure you have that high preference bag packed and ready, and that you're going to use it. You're not going to wimp out. You're going to use it. So what's in that bag? So snacks, we have all of our favorite snacks in that bag. And at one point in time, I seriously used to feel like I would pack the pantry to go to certain places, but it's what we had to do. Snacks, sensory toys. So any sensory toys or devices that your child is currently utilizing, especially if they're utilizing it for a coping skill, pack it. We used to pack. Now our child is high sensory input. He needs high sensory input in order to regulate a lot of the time. So we would pack those hot hands, those little carbon packs that you like mush and then they get hot. We used to pack those because he used to like to hold them and feel the heat, and it would regulate him. So any sensory devices or toys that your child is currently utilizing for coping skills, you're going to make sure it's on hand, because that is the point of those things. They're meant to be utilized when needed. So you need to make sure that you have them on hand. If your child has a specific seat, so if they have a seat device, like a disc seat or a booster seat or a boppy seat or a bumbo seat or anything like that they utilize at home that's portable, you want to make sure that you bring that. Technology. I know there's a lot of debate on the technology, but bring the technology. Bring it. Bring the charger, bring the cube, bring it. Bring a set of headphones with it. That way your child is safe and content and has an escape, and they can interact at times when possible, and you always want to work towards lengthening that time of interaction. But if they need a break, if they need an escape, if they need to like check out, that has to be okay. You need to do that for your child, because for them, this feels like survival. This is like worst case scenario most of the time when we're talking about individuals who are dealing with sensory processing issues. Social settings are overwhelming, high anxiety, stress. So you want to make sure you're alleviating that as much as possible. And listen, give grace. Give grace to your child as they're learning and growing in these situations, and know that you're working towards progress, and give grace to yourself because you are doing this day in and day out. And now we're at the holiday season. We are at the season of gathering. And if this is an important part of your life, some people could care less about this, but if this is an important part of your life where you're going to go to events and you're going to go to parties and you're going to go to the lights and the shows and the caroling, you have to give yourself grace that this is where you both are as a team in order to participate in the most meaningful way possible to you at this point in time. It is a season, and in every season you will grow. But those are my holiday tips. Besides the normal, limiting the sugars, limiting the dyes, making sure we're getting good, adequate sleep, and we're keeping a consistent schedule, these are my tips to you for surviving the holidays when we have a child um, dealing with sensory overload. So I hope that was helpful. If you have something else that you're doing, please share it with me. I would love to hear it. But in the meantime, until I see you again, be kind, be safe, be clever, be a good friend, have fun, but most importantly, just breathe until we see each other again.